Well, hello, and we're talking with David Watts here today. You find him very familiar, and you'll be thinking, where do I know this man? It's normally quite often Timmel Day, isn't it, David?
Timmel Day often, yeah.
Quite often. But on this occasion, and by the way, we're going to do another interview about that, we want to talk about the PAG meeting on Monday night, which you are the guest, and it's about schools again. Obviously, it's your subject. What are you going to be doing exactly?
It's on Monday night at the Manx Legion at 7:30, Paul, and I'm going to be talking about COVID learning loss and how the COVID pandemic has affected the primary schools' attainment results, which I've had to source through Freedom of Information again, because the schools, despite being directed to do so, many of them had not published their results, and I can see why.
Okay, do you want to give some highlights? I mean, don't give everything away from Monday night.
I'll give everything away from Monday night.
Just some stuff.
I'm looking at three key areas. I'm looking at reception, Class R. I'm looking at end of Key Stage 1, that's the Year 2, and the end of Key Stage 2, the Year 6s, those going to secondary school. If I told you, for example, one of the headline figures, and I'll give you this one. At the end of reception year, pupils are meant to reach what they call a good level of development, and that's to do with social, emotional, communication, but also maths and literacy at obviously a basic level because it's first year of school. 2019 was the last year we had results pre-COVID. 71% of the island's reception class got a good level of development, roughly on a par with England. After COVID and the lockdowns, 3 lockdowns they would have had, or 2 lockdowns for reception classes actually, that figure is 41%.
Wow.
So 59% of the reception class failed to reach a good level of development.
Any idea why our lockdown should be more like this? Because I mean, the UK was having lockdowns, weren't they? So,
They were. The UK haven't released the GLD figures yet.
So they could be the same.
They could be the same. I mean, It's obviously going to be impact, but you're looking at learning loss across all areas of the curriculum. And I've published a guide, which is hopefully going live on the PAG website this weekend. And it's the most comprehensive guide that's ever been produced, I think, to primary schools on the island. Each school has got a 2-page report on itself, which was quite
2 pages.
2 pages, and it's full of graphs and data for reception, year 2 and year 6, and it also puts contextual data in there, so parents can make them entirely free to make their own mind up. They can look at free school meal data, they can look at the class sizes, and they can see what the results were in 2019 and what they were in 2021. Some schools stepped up to the plate and did better results. Others, it was abject failure, I'm afraid to say.
Talking about graphs, what have you got for us here? Because you've got 2 graphs.
A couple of graphs. When children...
Shall I hold this first one?
Yeah, hold the first one up. That's
my camera there.
talking about the number of children reaching level 4B at the end of year 6. That's the expectation, that they go off the secondary school with a level 4B in each of the 5 core subjects. And you can see the one on the right is 2021, and the blue figure is 2019, the pre-COVID. This shows the percentage of children failing to reach that standard. Now that standard is the minimum required to access the secondary curriculum. So for example, in maths, in 2019 we had 15.8% failing to get that grade. That rose to 33% after COVID. 38%, more than a third, are not at the standard for writing. A quarter are not at the standard for science.
And this is all from the data you've been able to obtain?
It's all from the data I've had to obtain.
And I know you have to push hard for your data.
I have to push hard from it. There's so much obfuscation and time. And of course, there's thousands of data sets.
Yeah.
Now, I've treated that as a local educational authority average, if you like. So those figures there are for all 32 schools combined. When you look at the individual schools, you'll see some have stepped up to the plate, as I said, some haven't. So here's an example.
Let me hold this one up. This is Arbury.
Arbury School, yeah. And there's 5 years worth of data there for the number of children reaching level 5, i.e. they would be the ones that would go into the top set at secondary school. And you can see, if you look at the last 2 columns in each of the subjects, the drop from 2019 to 2021. Wow. So at Arbury, for example, in maths, pre-COVID, almost 2/3 of the children were getting the high level, which is good.
Yeah.
After COVID, 1/3.
I mean,
and it goes across.
Oh, so is this particularly one that stands out, or
no? There are many.
They're
like
roughly
it.
the same.
There are many like it.
Okay.
And if we go back to GLD, for example, there are some schools where not one child attained a GLD.
This pushback, and obviously, I'm always fascinated about how you have to use your freedom of information very I mean, there's somebody will say you're vexatious almost, but you'd call it being, you have to keep pushing because you can't get the results, right?
Pushing, and as I said, the department did mandate for schools to publish this on their website. So when they do, they only publish 1 year's worth of results. So that's just a snapshot. So that's not particularly helpful.
How can we make things better? I mean, simply by having more openness.
More openness and transparency. Julie Edge has pledged for her department to be open and transparent, but it's anything but.
I mean, it's not just where people in the Isle of Man decide they want to send their children and therefore be in the right areas. It's people. This is going out to a bigger audience. People who must be thinking about moving here. This is a very important part of anyone's thoughts, isn't it?
Funny you should say that, Paul, because I get lots of emails or messages on Facebook saying, I know you do work on schools, because if they Google Isle of Man primary school league tables, one of the PAGs is one of the first things that comes up, and school league tables are prevalent across. They ask where should they go. I just send them a copy of the PAG paper and say, look, make your own mind up. There's all the data there, from class sizes, the socio-economic data of the school. Some schools, like Henry Bloom Noble, I think about a third roughly of the children there have English as an additional language, which means if they get a level 4 in literacy, that's very good, because they're speaking 2 languages and they might not be speaking English necessarily at home as their first language. So I'd say all the results are in context. It's not to wave a stick and say that school's failing, that's not. It's also about something which I did a Freedom Information on a while ago called Pupil Premium. And when Mr. Krajine was in Hamilton House, he put a bid in about 2-3 budgets ago for £2.68 million to the Treasury for Pupil Premium. That's extra funding for those schools that have got a high ratio of special needs, free school meals. That was declined. But if you look at the data, and it's also in the Good School Guide, how a free school meal child compares to a non-free school meal child in terms of attainment, you'll see quite a gap. And that goes throughout, and it still persists right through to GCSE. England have introduced Pupil Premium. I always like to compare us with Hartlepool because it's roughly the same size, and their results are very good. But they're one of the most deprived areas of England, but they're getting that extra money. So it's a question of, and Jersey do it incidentally as well, and Jersey have done some sterling work on addressing COVID learning loss.
So your Monday event is more of this, is it? You're
it's
going to be
more
explaining all this out.
We're going to go look at the Isle of Man as a local education authority. I'm going to do a very basic introduction, and I'm just going to show selected graphs and tables that show why I've chosen league tables. My league tables aren't perfect because some schools have only got 10 pupils in a class, so one pupil is 10%.
Is there any good news in there at all?
There is good news, because you'll see the schools that have done well, and I hope the good news is that it will bring some MHKs on board. We've got a new crop in the house now. It's always been the elephant in the room, attainment, as far as they're concerned. In my opinion, no one's ever addressed it. And do you remember the Beeman's report?
Oh gosh.
And even they suggested, why aren't we looking at attainment?
Well, it's been fascinating as always talking to you, and so look out for the one about this year's Tynwald Day specials. And again, Monday night, 7:30.
7:30, Manx Legion, free to come along. So please come along. I'll take questions. I'm not an expert. I'm just a parent that cares. I want a strong, robust education system. The easiest thing for me, my children just finished their compulsory schooling this week, actually. So I'm not at primary school anymore, but I still want to live in a jurisdiction that's a strong, robust education system, and that, of course, will attract people here.